I confessed to my perfect wife about my affair with a coworker. I've been with my wife Deja for over 18 years now. I love her with all my heart, and I never thought I would find myself in this situation. We met in college and were instantly drawn to each other. She was my first everything, my first date, my first kiss, my first love. I was hers too. We never dated anyone else before meeting each other, so our bond was incredibly strong from the start. Deja stayed by my side through thick and thin. She supported me while I studied for the bar exam, working tirelessly to become a lawyer. In return, I was there for her as she pursued her degree in library science. We were a team, always pushing each other to be our best selves. After college, I landed a job at a prestigious law firm, where I've been working for almost a decade now. The work is challenging but rewarding, and I thought I had everything I could ever want: a fulfilling career and a loving wife. But then, everything changed when Sue started working at the firm. She was hired as a new secretary, and we hit it off right away. She was funny, smart, and easy to talk to. We quickly became friends, bonding over our shared love of coffee and our mutual disdain for the firm's outdated filing system. At first, our friendship was innocent. We would chat during our breaks, swapping stories about our weekends and complaining about the workload. Deja even met Sue a couple of times when she visited me at the office, and they seemed to get along well. But as time went on, my feelings for Sue started to shift. I found myself looking forward to our conversations more and more, eagerly awaiting her arrival each morning. We started texting outside of work, sharing jokes and memes late into the night. I tried to convince myself that it was just a harmless friendship, that I wasn't doing anything wrong. But deep down, I knew that my feelings for Sue were growing stronger by the day. I was drawn to her in a way that I couldn't quite explain, and it terrified me. I knew I had to do something before it was too late. I couldn't bear the thought of hurting Deja, of throwing away everything we had built together. But at the same time, I couldn't deny the way I felt about Sue. I was torn, trapped between my love for my wife and my growing attraction to my coworker. I didn't know what to do or who to turn to. All I knew was that I had to find a way to make things right before I lost everything that mattered to me. As the weeks turned into months, my friendship with Sue deepened. We started spending more and more time together at work, finding excuses to collaborate on projects and eat lunch together in the break room. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and I found myself opening up to her in ways I never had with anyone else, not even Deja. Sue and I began texting each other constantly, even when we weren't at work. It started innocently enough with casual check-ins and funny memes, but soon our messages took on a more personal tone. We started sharing our hopes and dreams, our fears and insecurities. I found myself confiding in her about my struggles at the firm, and she always seemed to know just what to say to make me feel better. Before I knew it, Sue had become a constant presence in my life. I thought about her all the time, even when I was at home with Deja. I caught myself daydreaming about our conversations, replaying our inside jokes in my head. I started looking forward to going to work each day just so I could see her. I tried to rationalize my feelings, telling myself that it was normal to have close friendships with coworkers. But deep down, I knew that what I felt for Sue was more than just friendship. I was drawn to her in a way that I couldn't quite explain, and it both thrilled and terrified me. I knew that I was treading on dangerous ground, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. Every time I tried to pull away from Sue, to put some distance between us, I found myself drawn right back in. Her smile, her laugh, the way she always seemed to understand me, it was intoxicating. At home, I started to feel guilty and distant from Deja. I knew that I was neglecting our relationship, that I was putting more energy into my friendship with Sue than I was into my marriage. But I didn't know how to stop. I was caught in a web of my own making, and I couldn't seem to find my way out. Deja noticed the changes in me, of course. She asked me if everything was okay at work, if I was feeling stressed or overwhelmed. I brushed off her concerns, telling her that everything was fine. But inside I was crumbling. I knew that I was betraying her trust, that I was crossing lines that I had never thought I would cross. And still, I couldn't seem to stay away from Sue. Our conversations grew more intimate, more flirtatious. We started finding excuses to touch each other. A brush of the hand, a lingering hug. I knew that I was playing with fire, but I couldn't seem to resist the flames. Every night I lay awake in bed, my mind racing with thoughts of Sue. I imagined what it would be like to hold her, to kiss her, to be with her in ways that I had only ever been with Deja. The guilt ate away at me, but still I couldn't seem to stop. I was in too deep and I didn't know how to get out. All I knew was that I needed to find a way to make things right, before I destroyed everything that I held dear. As my feelings for Sue grew stronger, I knew that I needed to talk to someone about what I was going through. I couldn't keep bottling everything up inside, but I was too ashamed to confide in any of my friends. That's when I decided to reach out to my sister, Sarah. Sarah and I had always been close, and I knew that she would give me an honest perspective on my situation. I called her up one evening and poured my heart out to her, telling her everything about my friendship with Sue and the guilt that was eating away at me. To my surprise, Sarah didn't judge me or condemn me. Instead, she listened patiently and then gently pointed out what I had been too afraid to admit to myself. I was having an emotional affair with Sue. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I had always thought of affairs as something physical, something that involved sneaking around and illicit encounters. But Sarah helped me see that emotional affairs could be just as damaging, if not more so, than physical ones. She explained that by investing so much time and energy into my relationship with Sue, I was taking away from my marriage with Deja. I was sharing parts of myself with Sue that I should have been sharing with my wife, and I was betraying Deja's trust in the process. I knew that Sarah was right, but I didn't know what to do. I was torn between my feelings for Sue and my commitment to Deja. I loved my wife with all my heart, but I couldn't deny the connection that I felt with Sue. For days I struggled with what to do. I knew that I needed to come clean to Deja, but I was terrified of how she would react. Would she be angry, hurt? Would she leave me? Finally, I couldn't take the guilt anymore. I knew that I needed to confess to Deja, no matter the consequences. I sat her down one evening and told her everything, from the first time I met Sue to the emotional affair that had developed between us. At first, Deja was silent. She stared at me with a look of confusion on her face, as if she couldn't quite process what I was saying. I braced myself for her anger, for her tears, for the inevitable fallout. But to my surprise, Deja didn't react the way I had expected. Instead, she asked me a series of questions, her voice calm and measured. She wanted to know if I had slept with Sue, if I had been physical with her in any way. I assured her that I hadn't, that my betrayal had been purely emotional. Deja nodded, taking in my words. Then, to my shock, she started to laugh. It wasn't a bitter or sarcastic laugh, but a genuine one, as if she found the whole situation amusing. I was taken aback by her reaction. I had just confessed to having an emotional affair, and yet my wife was laughing? I didn't know what to make of it. But as Deja explained, she understood the concept of emotional cheating, but she didn't see my friendship with Sue as a true betrayal. In her eyes, as long as I hadn't crossed any physical lines, I was still faithful to her. I was relieved by Deja's reaction, but also confused. I had been so consumed by guilt and shame, so convinced that I had done something unforgivable, and yet my wife seemed to be taking it all in stride. Little did I know, our conversation that night was just the beginning of a long journey of self-discovery and growth, both for myself and for my marriage. I stared at Deja in disbelief as she continued to laugh, her eyes crinkling at the corners. I had just poured my heart out to her, confessing my emotional affair with Sue, and yet she seemed to find the whole situation amusing. "I'm sorry," Deja said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "It's just, I never thought I'd hear the words emotional cheating come out of your mouth." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, unsure of how to respond. I had been prepared for anger, for tears, for accusations, but laughter, that had thrown me for a loop. I don't understand," I stammered. "I just told you that I've been having an emotional affair with another woman. How can you be laughing?" Deja's expression softened, and she reached out to take my hand. "Honey, I know you. I know your heart. And I know that you would never intentionally do anything to hurt me or our marriage." I felt a lump form in my throat at her words. How could she have so much faith in me, even after what I had just confessed? But I have hurt you," I said, my voice cracking. "I've betrayed your trust, even if it wasn't physical. I've given parts of myself to Sue that I should have been giving to you." Deja nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I understand that, and I appreciate your honesty in telling me. But I also know that emotions can be complicated, and that it's possible to have feelings for someone else without acting on them." I shook my head, frustration welling up inside me. "But that's just it. I have been acting on them, even if it wasn't physical. I've been texting Sue constantly, sharing things with her that I should have been sharing with you. I've been thinking about her all the time, even when I'm with you." Deja squeezed my hand, her touch gentle and reassuring. "I know, and I understand how that could feel like a betrayal. But I also know that you're human, and that it's natural to be drawn to other people sometimes. What matters is how you choose to act on those feelings." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I don't know what to do," I admitted. I care about Sue, but I love you. I don't want to lose you, Deja. Deja smiled softly, her eyes shining with understanding. You're not going to lose me, honey. I love you and I'm not going anywhere, but I do think we need to talk more about boundaries and what we both need from this marriage. I nodded, relief washing over me. I'm so sorry, Deja. I never meant to hurt you or make you doubt my commitment to you. Deja leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead. I know, honey. I forgive you. Just promise me that you'll always be honest with me, and that you'll come to me if you're ever struggling with your feelings. I nodded, my heart swelling with love and gratitude for my amazing wife. I promise, Deja. I promise. As we sat there together, hand in hand, I knew that we had a long road ahead of us, but I also knew that with Deja by my side, I could face anything. Our love was strong enough to weather any storm, even the ones that brewed within my own heart. In the days following my confession to Deja, I found myself grappling with a complex mix of emotions. On one hand, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief at having come clean to my wife about my emotional affair with Sue. Deja's understanding and forgiveness had lifted a tremendous weight off my shoulders, and I was grateful beyond words for her love and support. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the lingering feelings of guilt that continued to gnaw at me. Even though Deja had assured me that she didn't consider my actions to be a true betrayal, I still felt like I had let her down in some way. I had allowed myself to develop feelings for another woman, and even though I hadn't acted on them physically, I knew that I had still crossed a line. To make matters worse, my crush on Sue didn't disappear overnight just because I had confessed to Deja. I still found myself thinking about her constantly, my heart racing every time I saw her at work. I tried to distance myself from her, to focus on my marriage and my commitment to Deja, but it was easier said than done. I found myself questioning everything: my feelings for Sue, my love for Deja, my own sense of self. I had always prided myself on being a loyal and faithful husband, but now I wasn't so sure. How could I have let myself develop feelings for another woman? What did that say about me as a person, as a partner? I knew that I needed to find a way to move forward, to put my emotional affair with Sue behind me and focus on my marriage. But I also knew that it wasn't going to be easy. I had opened up a Pandora's box of emotions and desires, and I wasn't sure how to close it again. As the weeks passed, I found myself struggling to make sense of everything that had happened. I loved Deja with all my heart, but I couldn't deny the connection that I had felt with Sue. I knew that I needed to find a way to reconcile those two parts of myself, to figure out what I truly wanted and needed in my life. Finally, after much soul-searching and introspection, I decided that I needed to update my story and provide further insights into what had happened. I sat down at my computer one evening and started typing, pouring out all of my thoughts and feelings onto the screen. I wrote about my initial attraction to Sue, about how our friendship had gradually evolved into something more. I wrote about the guilt and confusion that had consumed me, about how I had struggled to make sense of my own emotions. And I wrote about Deja's surprising response to my confession, about how her love and understanding had given me the strength to face my own demons. As I wrote, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I realized that my emotional affair with Sue had been a symptom of something deeper, a longing for connection, for excitement, for something new and different in my life. But I also realized that those things couldn't come at the expense of my marriage, of the love and commitment that Deja and I had built together. I knew that I had a long road ahead of me, that I would need to work hard to rebuild trust and intimacy with Deja. But I also knew that I was willing to put in the effort, to do whatever it took to make our marriage stronger than ever before. And so, with a sense of determination and hope, I hit publish on my story update and took a deep breath. I knew that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but I also knew that with Deja by my side, anything was possible. As I continued to navigate the aftermath of my emotional affair with Sue, I began to notice a shift in my feelings towards her. Slowly but surely, the intense attraction and infatuation that had once consumed me started to fade away, replaced by a sense of clarity and perspective. It was a gradual process, one that happened so subtly that I almost didn't notice it at first. But as the days turned into weeks, I found myself thinking about Sue less and less, my mind no longer constantly preoccupied with thoughts of her. At first, I wasn't sure what had changed. I had been so convinced that my feelings for Sue were real, that the connection between us was something special and undeniable. But as I reflected on our relationship, I started to realize that perhaps my attraction to her had been more about what she represented than who she actually was. In many ways, Sue was a lot like Deja. They were both strong, intelligent, and independent women, with a fierce sense of loyalty and a quick wit. They both had a way of making me feel seen and understood, of challenging me to be my best self. And perhaps that was why I had been drawn to Sue in the first place, because she reminded me of the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. In Sue, I had seen echoes of Deja, and that familiarity had been both comforting and exciting. But as I spent more time with Deja, as we worked to rebuild our marriage and strengthen our bond, I started to realize that my feelings for Sue had been a pale imitation of the love and connection I shared with my wife. Deja was my soulmate, my partner in every sense of the word, and no one could ever take her place. With this realization came a sense of relief and clarity. I no longer felt torn between two women, no longer felt like I was betraying Deja with every thought and interaction with Sue. Instead, I felt a renewed sense of commitment to my marriage, a deeper appreciation for the love and history that Deja and I shared. Of course, this didn't mean that my relationship with Sue went back to the way it was before. I knew that I needed to set clear boundaries with her, to establish a new dynamic that was purely professional and platonic. I started by cutting back on our texting and personal conversations, keeping our interactions focused solely on work-related matters. I made a point of not sharing any intimate details about my life or my marriage, and I stopped seeking Sue out for emotional support or validation. At first it was awkward and uncomfortable, especially given how close Sue and I had become. But to my surprise, Sue seemed to understand and respect my need for distance. She didn't push back or try to maintain our previous level of intimacy, and our relationship soon settled into a new, more appropriate rhythm. As I watched Sue start to date one of the new interns at the firm, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I knew that I had made the right decision in prioritizing my marriage and my commitment to Deja, and I was grateful for the lessons that my emotional affair with Sue had taught me. Looking back, I realized that my attraction to Sue had been a reflection of my own insecurities and unmet needs, rather than a genuine connection between two people. And while I would always care for Sue as a friend and colleague, I knew that my heart belonged solely to Deja, now and forever. With my feelings for Sue fading into the background, I found myself turning my attention back to my marriage and my relationship with Deja. I knew that I had a lot of work to do to rebuild the trust and intimacy that had been strained by my emotional affair, and I was determined to put in the effort to make things right. One evening, as Deja and I were sitting together on the couch, I decided to bring up the subject of my crush on Sue. I knew that we had already discussed it briefly, but I felt like I needed to delve deeper, to fully explain my thoughts and feelings to my wife. Deja, I said softly, taking her hand in mine. I know we've talked about this before, but I want to apologize again for my emotional affair with Sue. I never meant to hurt you or betray your trust, and I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused. Deja looked at me with a gentle smile, her eyes full of understanding. I know, honey, she said, and I appreciate your apology. But I also know that emotions can be complicated, and I don't blame you for developing feelings for someone else. I shook my head, feeling a lump form in my throat. But that's just it, I said. I shouldn't have developed those feelings in the first place. I should have been focusing on our marriage, on our love for each other. Deja squeezed my hand, her touch warm and reassuring. I understand why you might feel that way, she said. But I also think it's important to remember that we've been together for a long time, and it's natural for feelings to shift and change over the years. She paused for a moment, her expression thoughtful. You know, when we first met in college, I never could have imagined that we would end up here, married and building a life together. You were my first everything, my first love, my first kiss, my first partner in every sense of the word. I nodded, feeling a rush of emotion at the memory of those early days. You were my first everything too, I said softly, and I wouldn't trade a single moment of our journey together. Deja smiled, her eyes shining with love and affection. I know that, honey, and that's why I trust you, even when things get difficult. I know that you would never intentionally do anything to hurt me or our marriage. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, overwhelmed by the depth of Deja's love and understanding. I don't deserve you, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Deja shook her head, her expression fierce. Don't say that, she said. You're a good man and a wonderful husband. We all make mistakes and have moments of weakness, but what matters is how we learn and grow from them. She took my face in her hands, her gaze intense and unwavering. I love you, and I'm here for you no matter what. We're in this together, for better or for worse. I nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude and love for the amazing woman beside me. "I love you too," I said, "and I promise to always be honest with you, and to work every day to be the husband you deserve." As we sat there together, holding each other close, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I knew that my emotional affair with Sue had been a mistake, but I also knew that it had taught me valuable lessons about love, commitment, and the importance of communication. And with Deja by my side, I knew that I could face anything that life threw our way. Our love was strong, unshakable, and built on a foundation of trust and understanding that could weather any storm. As Deja and I continued our conversation, we began to delve deeper into the topic of boundaries and trust within our marriage. It was a sensitive subject, but one that we both knew we needed to address head-on if we wanted to move forward and strengthen our relationship. "I know that my emotional affair with Sue crossed a line," I said, my voice heavy with regret, "and I want to do everything in my power to make sure that something like that never happens again." Deja nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I appreciate that, honey, and I agree that we need to set some clear boundaries and expectations moving forward." She paused for a moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. "For me, the most important thing is honesty and communication. I need to know that you'll always come to me with any issues or concerns, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable they might be." I nodded, feeling a sense of determination wash over me. "Absolutely," I said. "I promise to always be honest with you, even when it's hard. I never want there to be secrets or unspoken feelings between us again." Deja smiled, her eyes shining with warmth and affection. "That means a lot to me," she said. "And in return, I promise to always listen and to try to understand your perspective, even if I don't necessarily agree with it." We talked for a while longer, discussing the specific boundaries and expectations we had for our marriage. We agreed that it was okay to have friendships with members of the opposite sex, but that those friendships needed to be appropriate and respectful of our relationship. We also agreed that we would make a conscious effort to prioritize quality time together, whether that meant going on regular date nights or simply carving out time each day to connect and talk about our lives. As we spoke, I could feel a sense of relief and gratitude washing over me. I knew that I had made a mistake in developing feelings for Sue, but I also knew that Deja's love and understanding were stronger than any temporary infatuation. "I know that I still have a lot of work to do to regain your trust," I said softly, taking Deja's hand in mine. "But I want you to know that I'm committed to being the best husband I can be, and to always putting our marriage first." Deja squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with emotion. "I know you are," she said. "And I trust you, even when things get tough. We've been through so much together, and I know that we can get through anything as long as we're honest and open with each other." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, "but I'm so grateful for your love and support now and always." Deja leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to my lips, her touch soft and reassuring. "You deserve all the love in the world," she murmured. "And I'm so lucky to be the one who gets to give it to you." As we sat there together, our hearts and minds connected in a way that felt deeper and more profound than ever before, I knew that we had a long road ahead of us. But I also knew that with Deja by my side, and with a commitment to honesty, communication, and trust, we could overcome any obstacle and build a love that would last a lifetime. In the weeks and months that followed our conversation about boundaries and trust, Deja and I made a concerted effort to prioritize our marriage and spend more quality time together. We both knew that it was easy to get caught up in the day-to-day stresses of work and life, but we were determined to make our relationship a top priority. We started by setting aside dedicated time each week for date nights, whether that meant trying out a new restaurant in town or simply cooking dinner together at home. We took turns planning special outings and activities, from hikes in the nearby mountains to weekend getaways to the coast. But it wasn't just the big, planned events that made a difference in our marriage. We also made a point of finding small, everyday ways to connect and strengthen our bond. We started taking walks together in the evenings after work, holding hands and talking about our days. We made a habit of leaving little love notes for each other around the house, tucked into pockets or taped to the bathroom mirror. We even started a new tradition of having coffee together every morning before work, sitting at the kitchen table and discussing our plans and dreams for the future. It was a simple thing, but it made a world of difference in how connected and in sync we felt with each other. As we focused more and more on our marriage, I found that my feelings for Sue continued to fade into the background. It wasn't that I stopped caring about her as a friend and colleague, but rather that my emotional energy was now directed towards my wife and our relationship. I no longer found myself daydreaming about Sue or looking forward to our interactions at work. Instead, I was excited to come home to Deja each evening, to share my day with her and hear about hers in return. I was grateful for the love and laughter we shared, and for the sense of warmth and security that came from knowing we were in this together, no matter what. Of course, there were still moments of tension and disagreement, as there are in any marriage. But Deja and I had learned to approach these challenges with patience, understanding, and a willingness to listen to each other's perspectives. We had become a team in every sense of the word, and we knew that we could weather any storm as long as we had each other. As the months passed, I began to see our marriage in a new light. It was no longer just a comfortable, familiar presence in my life, but rather a source of joy, growth, and endless possibility. I realized that I had taken Deja for granted in many ways, and I was determined to never make that mistake again. I started making a conscious effort to show my appreciation for all the little things she did, from packing my lunch each day to always being there to listen when I needed to vent about work. I made a point of telling her how much I loved and admired her, not just on special occasions, but every chance I got. And slowly but surely, I could feel our bond growing stronger and deeper with each passing day. We laughed more, talked more, and enjoyed each other's company in a way that felt both comfortable and exciting at the same time. Looking back, I realized that my emotional affair with Sue had been a turning point in our marriage. It had forced us to confront some difficult truths and have some uncomfortable conversations, but it had also opened the door to a new level of honesty, trust, and intimacy between us. And as I watched Deja smile at me across the dinner table, her eyes shining with love and contentment, I knew that I would spend the rest of my life working to be the husband she deserved and cherishing every moment we had together. As I sat down to reflect on the events of the past year, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and gratitude for the journey I had been on. What had started as an innocent friendship with a coworker had turned into an emotional affair that nearly cost me everything I held dear. But through the pain and confusion, I had emerged a stronger, wiser, and more committed husband and partner. Looking back, I realized that my attraction to Sue had been a symptom of deeper issues within myself and my marriage. I had been taking Deja for granted, neglecting our relationship in favor of work and other distractions. I had allowed myself to become complacent, assuming that our love would always be there without putting in the effort to nurture and sustain it. But my emotional affair with Sue had been a wake-up call, forcing me to confront the ways in which I had been failing as a husband and a partner. It had shown me the importance of open communication, trust, and setting clear boundaries in a relationship. And it had reminded me of the incredible gift I had in Deja and the love and commitment we shared. Through our conversations and efforts to reconnect, Deja and I had rediscovered the spark and passion that had brought us together in the first place. We had learned to prioritize each other and our marriage, making time for the small moments of connection and intimacy that had once seemed insignificant. We had become a team in every sense of the word, supporting each other through the ups and downs of life with love, patience, and understanding. As I looked to the future, I knew that the lessons I had learned would stay with me forever. I knew that building a strong, healthy marriage took work and dedication, and that there would always be challenges and obstacles along the way. But I also knew that with Deja by my side, and with a commitment to honesty, trust, and open communication, we could overcome anything that life threw our way. I thought back to our wedding day, and the vows we had made to each other in front of our family and friends. I promised to love you, to cherish you, and to be your partner in all things, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, for as long as we both shall live. At the time, those words had seemed like a romantic ideal, a promise of a perfect fairy tale love that would never fade or falter. But now, I understood the true depth and meaning of those vows. Loving someone wasn't about grand gestures or sweeping declarations, but about the small, everyday acts of kindness, generosity, and compassion. It was about showing up, even when things were hard, and choosing to be there for each other no matter what. As I pulled Deja close and whispered my love and appreciation for her, I felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over me. I knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be, with the woman I was meant to spend my life with. And I knew that whatever challenges and trials lay ahead, we would face them together, hand in hand and heart to heart. Looking back on my journey, I realized that the most important lesson I had learned was the power of forgiveness, both for others and for myself. I had made mistakes, and I had caused pain to the person I loved most in the world. But through Deja's love and understanding, I had learned to forgive myself, to accept my flaws and imperfections, and to keep striving to be the best version of myself. And so, as I looked to the future with hope and excitement, I made a silent vow to myself and to Deja. I would never take our love for granted again. I would cherish every moment we had together, and work every day to be the husband and partner she deserved. I would communicate openly and honestly, and always put our relationship first. And most of all, I would love her with all my heart, now and forever. For in the end, that was what mattered most. Not the mistakes we had made or the challenges we had faced, but the love and commitment we shared. And with that love as our guide, I knew that we could build a beautiful life together, one day at a time.